Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Cinemondo podcast.
Hey, Burke, I just want to say that you mesmerized me in that opening credit when you kind of with your hands coming at me.
Oh, yeah?
That was weird.
That photograph of me
You're
leaping
hypnotized. Yes.
through the void, through the Cinemondo spiral.
It takes a few seconds to get back on track.
Well, it's kind of manga style, isn't it? Manga style, you know,
It
that
is.
the whole vibe of our current. I don't know. There's so much influence from manga and anime, Japanese culture. You know, I mean, to the kind of things I like. And we're going to talk about a television program today. How many episodes were there of this?
8?
Oh,
It was like,
it was just one season, 8
One
episodes.
One
It was a
season of 8
BBC
episodes?
co-production, I think.
Mhm. It was.
So, it was. Joe Barton was the creator, and it's a film called Giri. It's a series called Giri Haji, it's available on Netflix now, but originally was a BBC show.
And that
Yeah.
translates to duty shame. Duty
Yes.
/ shame.
yeah,
right?
which is what
So
it's
there was a
all
lot
about.
of, it's all about duty and shame.
And it gets into that gangster thing of duty, you know, the whole gangster thing, and you know, you see that in all gangs. It seems like that's a big part of a lot of gangster dramas, where there's that honor
Right.
among the gangsters, and you have to hold up your honor. But there's also that kind of honor in law enforcement as well, and that's what's interesting about this series is that it's about two brothers, which is very Japanese mythology kind of a thing, where you have the two brothers who are at odds with each other. I've seen that in so many manga stories and anime stories, where one is a good brother and a bad brother, and you have your duty to your family, to your blood family. You have your duty to your Yakuza gangster family, and then you have your duty to your job, which
Right.
is, in this case, one of the brothers is a police officer. One
Right.
brother's a gangster, one brother's a police officer. And
Yeah.
one brother has done something really bad and has
Super
fled to England. He's gone to London. So his police brother has to go find him and basically help. And there's also all this other stuff in there about how the gangs work with the police, and how you want to just tone down, you want to get them happy in certain ways and kind of bribe them with peace and all that between the gangs. They don't want the gangs to have a big gang war.
No.
So something happened, and the police, he did something bad from this gang to that gang, so you got to deliver him to this gang. It's very interestingly complicated. It sounds complicated.
Well, and also the black sheep brother,
Yeah.
he's been missing for a while. They're not even sure if he's alive, right?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
they suspect he's alive, but so when Kenzo has to go to London to try and find him, I don't know if he really expected him to be alive or not. He wasn't totally
Right.
sure.
Right.
So the main thing was to solve the mystery of his disappearance, because he got caught up in the whole gangster
Right.
thing. He was working for one of the main guys who was keeping the peace by,
Right.
still being a terrible person, but
Yeah.
they felt like it kind of leveled it out. And sure enough, when things go awry and, that guy ends up, toppling a little bit, things do go crazy. So they were
Yeah.
right all along.
Yeah.
It was like-
You focus on the story focuses on Kenzo. Unfamiliar. He leaves his family in Tokyo, and there's some issues. There's some issues with his wife, and of course the extended
And
family.
he's the
lives there.
policeman brother.
He's a
Yeah.
policeman brother,
He's
Kenzo.
the good boy. Hey,
Yeah.
you know what we should do? We should play the trailer.
Oh,
The people can put faces to names.
do we have the trailer?
We do have the trailer.
Oh.
And I can
That's
I can
exciting.
it's always handy to have a trailer. So you guys ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's visually beautiful too. This.
Oh, great.
福原さん、こんばんは。Kさん。遥か遠くに誰かが池に石を投げ、その矢がようやくここまで届いたわけだ。
音 After a year of thinking he was dead, I just found out my brother,
Yuto.
he's probably alive.
And he's so hip.
Yeah.
You're close with your brother?
Yes, We were. He's wanted in Japan. He has done something terrible.
So, what are we investigating?
I'm looking for someone.
I love him.
ロンドンにヤクザはいませんよ。
いや、一人いる。
Cheers.
Rodney, is Kenzo in trouble?
We're all in trouble, honey. Not my place to say. Something bad happened.
You've no idea.
兄貴。お父さんから連絡あったから、タキ。俺たちが待ってるからって。
あんたの家族が始めたことだ。形はどうあれ、あんたの家族に落とし前をつけてもらうよ。
Your uncle is an absolute specimen of a man. Now I know why everyone's making such a fuss about this guy.
So what happens now?
I have put you in an impossible position.
People are dying, Kenzo.
A lot of drama.
It is my responsibility as a policeman to make him see justice. But my responsibility as a brother to keep him safe.
Every tiny split-second decision we make can potentially have a profound effect on everyone around us.
あの飲み屋の夜に。
優斗、やめろ。
一体何人が死んでんだ。東京で、ロンドンで、お前のために。
We crossed a line.
We're not bad people. We just did bad things.
One thing I
pretty
noticed
good.
is it looks so epic is that they didn't did they even show Justin Long in this? It's like,
I don't think so.
it's funny because he's kind of a person that's kind of known, and it's weird that he to me was also another highlight because he was so damaged and out of his element, and he was
Yeah.
really fun to watch. I mean, ultimately, I think Will Sharpe is Rodney, the sex
He's
worker,
amazing.
is probably
Yeah.
absolutely bar none the coolest thing this thing. And I feel like after it was done, I just wanted to see a whole show about him. What happened? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to see how he got there. I mean, everything about that character was spectacular. Just an incredible performance. Like, so just just I can't
Very
even describe
tragic.
how great it was.
Very tragic character, very sad.
Yeah,
even though he's
sad.
got this confidence, he struts around and
He's really
like
funny.
he owns the streets, but
Mhm.
he's this fragile, broken
Yeah.
kid, and everybody in this is really
Yeah.
good. I mean, the two brothers, the actors who play both of the brothers, are very intense
Yeah.
and very believable in their very different places in the story.
Right.
Even though I felt kind of bad for Kenzo because he was so boring. Like he had no fun character traits really. He was just kind of this like, I'll do the right thing, and he was kind of the wet blanket over everything
He
for a good
didn't
reason.
always do the right thing.
Well,
Yeah,
see,
he
that was the thing. Like he thought he was the good guy,
Yeah.
and he played it like he was a
Right.
good guy. But he did a lot of and that was my only problem. Is I feel like, would he do this? I don't know. There was a few suspect actions he took that I felt like weren't in character.
but because of that honor, that honor that he had
Mm.
he had to do it. It was his duty to do these things. It's that sort of like, how do you weigh the results of something? Is it in order for this family honor, whether it's the gangster family or your blood family, a bad thing that you have to do to honor that? Is it really a bad thing, or is it worth it, or is it your duty? Those are the questions that are interesting in this.
But is it honorable to commit crimes, to cover up crimes that you're saying the other person's being dishonorable for doing? So it's kind of
Right.
this weird.
Well, I think his character is interesting in that he's, his home is Tokyo, but he's in London, so he's in a strange place. He speaks
Yeah.
English.
Mhm.
He befriends, this professor who's also a
Sparks
police
fly.
detective. Yes,
Yeah.
Kelly MacDonald, who we're familiar with.
Mhm.
So I think it's interesting. He's like a fish out of water trying to navigate London
Yeah.
and navigate the underworld there to try to get his brother back and also,
Mhm.
save his brother. So he's just sort of there's a lot of things going on with him. So sometimes he's going to make what you might think is the wrong decision.
Like
Yeah.
way wrong, like ridiculously wrong, like on
Yeah.
so many
But
levels.
imagine if you're in that situation, in that with that all that going on, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I think it's tougher. for his character to always do what we think is the right thing.
Right.
And how far would you go to protect a loved one, you know, or a family member? And
Well, it's funny because he kept continuously telling his brother, I'm not gonna protect you anymore. I'm not covering up for you anymore. And then literally the next scene, he's doing some terrible thing to cover up for him. He constantly was saving his ass constantly, and he did not seem worth it.
But it's his brother though, and that you know, in the world of, you know, it's just, there's a family bond there that is, it's the blood is thicker, you know, than water kind of stuff. So it's believable to me. I think he's a little bit of, I do agree that his character is a little bit on the dull side. I think some of the other characters are much more vibrant and interesting, and sort of add life to the story.
But that's what to me made it so interesting when he got together with Rodney. You know, here's this real straight-laced, you know, very, you know, typical Tokyo duty-bound police officer coming to the wild London. You know, compared to Tokyo, London is probably pretty wild and gritty, and he meets this street kid. You know, this male prostitute. You know, he's a drug addict kid who's just this, you know, this broad personality, like a real interesting personality. And the two of them together were great. I mean, they were. I
love them together.
That would have been, you know, that's what partly makes this so fun, is seeing them kind of dealing with each other and the bond that develops between them and the friendship that develops. And
Rodney's a very smart character. He gets it. You know, he gets what you know what Kenzo's trying to do.
And he's really the guide, you know.
Yeah. And the analogy of throwing a stone and seeing the ripples, it's like every character does a thing that creates this ripple that ends terribly. So, you know, even though Kenzo thinks he's helping his brother by helping him, he's not.
Right.
And even though he thinks he's helping, you know, have peace and justice for, you know, London or whatever, everything that happens does not work.
Right.
It's just not. My only thing was I felt like some of his motivations were a little vague to me, even in the you know, the service of finding and protecting his brother. I thought some of his choices to do like this insane sort of assassination attempt with Justin Long, like someone he just met, to go on this big, you know, like 5 guys or whatever with like armed to the teeth. They run into this restaurant to kill a bunch of people. Like, why the hell would he do that? It just made no sense to me. Even trying to protect his brother. So even though I loved it and it looked great, it still was a little bit narratively like, I don't know.
Is that sort of the sense of, Brooke, you know this better than me, manga and that kind of stuff. Is that part of it, like this over the top? I mean, there's a lot of animation in this. Is really cool.
Oh no, I loved that. Yeah, the animation, right?
Yeah, there's animation. There's some cool stuff like they just throw in, like there's some lettering on a street, you know, in front of the character. I think it's Yuto.
That was really fun.
Yeah, there's stuff like that's in there.
Stylistically gorgeous.
Right.
Well,
and then there's last episode has a scene that's like that. So.
Well, yeah, like anime. There's a lot of anime influence in manga. I felt more like the manga, you know, the story, the type of story, and some of the crime. Because I'm sure everybody listening to this knows that in Japan, what we call comic books are called manga, and it's something that grown-ups read. I mean, they're made for grown-ups. They're not for kids. You know, some are for kids, of course, but there are some serious adult crime drama novels, historical dramas and things like that happen to be illustrated narratives, and it's accepted, it's okay to read them as a grown-up.
Yes.
And some of the stories are kind of go into that sort of mythological realm of that like exaggeration type of thing, where the stories are pumped up larger than life, and the action is a little extreme, and the you know, the violence is sometimes really extreme, and the drawing style. Tokyo has a look. Japan has a look. You know, there is a look to the style of architecture and the streets. There's a cleanness to it, and when you see that, when you see the, you know, the Miyazaki films that take place in reality, there's a look that Japan has, and this show kind of gets it. Even when they're in London, it has that exaggerated look to it. The colors are pumped up. The compositions are arranged in a way that is just slightly unnatural. Like shots where they zoom in on Kenzo at the pachinko parlor, and he's framed perfectly.
And that's in the trailer.
Yeah, and that other shot in the trailer where he's standing in a Japanese neighborhood and the camera just whips away from him. The framing of that is so, you see that in manga, the streets and they really. I really think they were going through some really good artists manga artists, and trying to get that feel, or maybe it just happens naturally with Japanese footage that you shoot in Japan is going to look like that.
It's interesting that it's a BBC production. It's just they got it right. So obviously they brought in the right people. So
well, also it works on I love mobster type entertainment. Anything with Sopranos, Gangs of London, Godfather. I love all of that. And what's so great about this, even though it's Japanese lead characters and half of it takes place in Tokyo, it still has a very really rich, lush, straight London mob feel to it. Yeah. And only half of it really is subtitles. It's mostly English, and they're also a lot of them are speaking English part of the time. But I don't think that should off-put anyone from wanting to see it if they're afraid that's going to be too much Tokyo or something. Because I love the Tokyo stuff. I love Japan. Yeah. But also I appreciate the cool London mob scene. That was great. They had the club owner who was kind of a small time trying to be in the mob. That was so good. He was in partnership with Justin Long, and they have a disagreement. Right. They're also a highlight, that whole dynamic. I
kind of get the impression though with that guy, with the club owner guy who was so great in this and such a great character, but he seemed to be pushed a little bit outside of reality, a little bit exaggerated in a way that you might see in a manga comic, where they would be depicting a British gangster. It's like, he'd be covered with tattoos, he'd have this haircut, he would talk like this, and he'd be wearing this certain kind of a dirty undershirt. It's like it was the kind of, I don't know if I'm just reading into it because it has such a Japanese vibe to it. But for some reason, to me, it hit on a lot of those notes that I really like about manga and anime, and with the story as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I think about how hard it would be to film this. It's a bilingual production.
Yeah.
So and the nuances to go back.
Two major locations.
Yeah.
Right. The translations, this is how it's written in English, but the translation to Japanese might be a little bit off or weird.
Right.
So, how do you sort of make that work so it works as the English language and the Japanese? It makes sense. I can imagine that would be very hard to pull off.
Yeah.
So I think it's very seamless. It's when you think about it. God, this was shot in Tokyo and in London. You go back and forth with the different settings, and it meshes perfectly. That's so hard to do because a lot of times you can tell. So they're trying to pull off London here. It might be in London, but that's not the way Londoners speak, or vice versa, like I'm sure in Japan. So they did that beautifully.
I also felt like they packed in so much in this. Like, even though it was 8 hours, they had so many narratives. Like, we had, the Kelly MacDonald character having the weird dynamic with her boyfriend who she framed. Well, he was, she turned him in for some kind of weird illegal activity, and then because she was jealous of his relationship. And then we have Kenzo's mother and wife, who are these kind of like nondescript characters in the first half of the show, and then in the second half they become these amazing hilarious characters. You're like, why were they not using these? Like, what happened?
Daughter.
Oh my God. And then the daughter, who for some reason, the worst parents in the world, she's like traveling around the world with her own passport by herself at 13 or whatever. It's like, what the hell? So you have and then we have, Rodney, the sex worker, who had this whole complicated, past with the worst mother, worst parenting in the world, and his sad, tragic relationship where his boyfriend committed suicide. It's just awful.
Commitment issues.
Yep. And so his whole thing was armor, like he was, drugs and alcohol and dancing, and he just, went through just a million people, like different partners every day, because he just had to keep everything at bay,
And he didn't take their feelings seriously, It was like the whole thing of kind of stringing someone along and then dumping them, when they get too close.
Just Yeah. And that happens in the first scene you see with him. He's doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like, and so that was because they have these really intense narratives that you even want to see more of, packed into despite the fact we have this huge epic mob thing with the Yakuza cutting off fingers and the being killed with samurai swords, and it just so much, but that made it so compelling because there's something for everyone. And let's talk also where we all lead up to this amazing dance scene that's just out of nowhere. Well, I actually have the clip.
well, this is a spoiler. We have to
Spoiler. Is it a spoiler? I guess it is a spoiler.
I would say yeah, because if you don't know that's coming, it is a really cool thing.
Okay.
When it happens, and it's so everybody, spoiler zone.
Spoiler zone. Just a little taste.
Yeah,
from the
if you
last
haven't
episode.
seen it, you should see it. Stop this podcast right now.
Watch Giri Haji for 8 hours.
Go watch Giri Haji for 8 hours, and then come back and watch the rest of this, because we're going to talk about something that is so unexpected in the show that it's like you're going to say, "What the hell?" But it works. I thought it worked
does.
really well in a very, like I keep saying, manga.
Yeah, I
anime.
mean, at first you see it start, and you're like, "What the hell?" Like it just sort of starts. They're on a rooftop, but all of a sudden this starts happening.
Yeah.
And then for some reason it kind of works. It's just this weird.
And it turns black and white, and the music is. And then there's characters there who aren't alive anymore, and
and you can see like there's his father.
Yeah,
I love this scene because like the good son just gets kind of pushed away because the bad son always gets all the attention.
And it tells the story.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a really cool.
It tells the relationships in this impressionistic way.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll pause the clip once we see Rodney because I have to see him again because I love him so much. He's wearing the most spectacular shirt in the scene.
Yeah.
But even the daughter comes in, she just pushes through them, because she doesn't want them together. So the dance definitely creates a narrative that is going on through the whole
and the
whole
mother,
show.
His wife, who's
so you have the wife who's trying to bring him back, but he's just drifting. He's so obsessed with his brother who was missing for so long. So it's really kind of interesting. Rodney, there he is. I love him so much.
The show is not this. This is not what the show is. It's only this, and it's
this
like
one
an imagination. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So we can end it. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's since we've watched that, let's talk about who told us about this show, because this show's been on Netflix, but I never heard of it. It's not on the splash page. It's kind of buried. But one of our former guests, Les Bohem, who talked about this and said, you should watch this show. And so we watched it and reviewed it.
Yeah, he was raving about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He kept saying there's something that happens in there in the last episode that you're not going to believe. I've never seen this before in a show. And it really is. It comes out of the blue. It's a very, it is pushed reality. It's not like total gritty realism. The show is pushed reality. It's like enhanced.
It has a lot of
life.
theatricality to it.
And beautiful staging and all this kind of stuff and choreography and things. But then this pushes it into another thing. But it is, I accept it because it's not corny. It's not stupid. Like suddenly, like Cop Rocks or something. Remember that show where suddenly they're singing, la, 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 and it's like that doesn't work. But this works because it's a dramatic moment when it happens. It's the culmination of a whole bunch of things that maybe Kenzo feels like he's failed all these people, and there's all these people who are in his life and intertwined, and the way your life intertwines with people and how this relationship affects that relationship. And when you think about it, it is kind of like a complicated choreography dance kind of thing where you come into contact with this person and then you're away from them, and then... And so the decision to do this actually makes an interesting kind of sense.
Yeah.
And it is just, you imagine it is just in his mind for a moment. It's like a second of his thoughts, maybe.
Right.
Because
and it was
then
really
goes
smart
back to reality,
Yeah, it was smart to put it black and white, because then it took it out of the reality, and all of a sudden you're seeing this beautiful, kind of almost noir feeling, dance scene. So I thought it was really a smart little encapsulation of the whole whole series in this one dance scene, which was very, very exciting and interesting. Yeah. I'm really shocked that they didn't renew the series because it got a lot of acclaim and it was so well done, and so that was kind of disappointing to find out there's not going to be a season 2 with Rodney in it.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what it would have been, though, because it's sort of resolved in this. The story kind of resolves, and
it's also probably, I was going to say it's really hard that's a hard production. I can also maybe it cost a lot of money, and maybe it's just bean counters saying it didn't make enough or whatever. It cost too much. could be something.
And you know,
simple.
BBC
Right.
a lot of times they don't do
Yeah.
season after season on things. A lot of times they
Yeah.
just cut
This
it
is
short.
the
and just
story they
have-
wanted to
yeah.
tell.
Right.
And you kind of wonder if they did a second season, would his brother disappear again and he's trying to find his brother again, except this time in Paris or something? You know,
Well, I could see it being another whole story, like an
Yeah.
anthology. Like,
It would
it's
have to be a
another
different
duty
story.
versus shame kind of
Right.
episode. Like, it wouldn't even have to necessarily involve the mob. It could be,
right.
but I would have been interested in that. But there it is.
Well, we
So
can
it's a
look for
gem.
other productions by these people,
Yeah.
like other films and other television series made by this same group of people, because they're good.
I, for one, like the fact that sometimes it's just 8 episodes and it's over. You
Yeah.
know, like, okay, I saw it. I'm good. I don't, like sometimes,
But
because
I
some
want
shows
more.
but some shows do that and you go, oh,
Yeah.
it really lost it in the second
Yeah, a
season.
lot of times
I've
they
seen
do.
it so many times.
Yeah,
And maybe they just made the smart decision. Hey,
That's true.
this is done.
Yeah.
it's true.
We told the story that we wanted to tell. It's like an 8-hour movie, which is kind
And
of
maybe
cool.
that's a relief too. People know they can watch the series and it actually does resolve.
Yeah.
I mean, the resolution
Exactly.
pretty much for every story. So you don't have to
Right.
worry about stuff being hung. I mean, I could see it sort of continuing maybe because the characters that are still alive, they still have the stories to tell. But this story itself had a very satisfying ended, storyline.
Right.
So
Right. So it's really wonderful. It's on Netflix. We highly recommend it. We
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
Les Bohem for, the shout out and for doing that. And
Yeah,
you
thanks
should
to
check it
Les.
out too. Absolutely.
definitely.
It's a good one.
And also,
Should we say bye-bye?
we have to
Bye-bye.
say that.
Or should we tell people
First we-
to
Which
We should always do that sooner.
What was
it's
doing
like a little bit of a delay.
I know. So we're starting to talk and it hits us in the face.
We just
Yeah.
get so into the story and then we just forget our.
We forget we're so
rules.
excited. So we can talk about movies and stuff.
Yes.
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks for
Okay.
joining us.
I was
And
just
we're
in
gonna-
my mind thinking about how much I miss Rodney still after seeing those clips. I want to see
maybe
him
we
again.
have to see if Will Sharpe is in something else.
We'll have to look
Yeah.
for another Will Sharpe
To look
project for
him.
sure.
And he's
He was
also a
super
director.
talented.
I think he's a writer director. So he's out there. He's going places. I think we'll
Talented.
see him again.
Excellent.
He was great.
Okay, that makes me feel better. I'll go look
Yes.
for Will Sharpe projects.
As long as Kathy feels better, we can.
I gotta feel better about this.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks so much
All
for
right.
watching and listening. As always.
Take care, everybody. Bye.